I'm your host Eric Eisenberg. Welcome to Hero Blend number 32. This week, Dwayne Johnson finally confirmed that he'll be playing Black Adam in a brand new Shazam movie, but the problem is a lot of people still don't exactly know who Shazam is. This week we're answering all your questions, so stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone. This week, I am very happy to have Mr. Mack Rawden from Cinema Blend. How's it going, man?
It's going great. Thanks for having me on, Eric.
Of course. It's always great to have you because you are our non-comic book expert.
I know nothing.
For those who have not caught Mack's previous appearances on the show, you are a bit of a comic book novice. You don't really know anything about any kind of superheroes or anything like that, which I think is contrary to my input on this show. But I'd like to hear your opinions on stuff because you kind of come from a different perspective. And now we are talking about Shazam, which is a character who has been around for decades and decades and decades, but at the same time isn't necessarily one that I think a lot of people know about. There's big news this week, obviously, so I'm hoping that you have some questions to ask me about what we can expect from a future Shazam movie.
I have a ton of questions because I would say of all of the superhero announcements, I would say this is on Guardians of the Galaxy level, where it was just like, I'm vaguely aware this exists.
Right.
I have a few preconceived notions, rumors, probably blatant lies, but hopefully we're going to get all of that sorted out.
Yeah, okay. I'm game, man. Let's do it.
Here we go. Alright, here's my first question. And this is like as basic as you can get. Okay. It's about the name. Okay?
Okay.
Alright. So here's what I don't understand. When people first said there's going to be a Shazam movie, I don't know why, but the first picture I have in my head is this like Dumbledore-looking wizard guy who's really old. So then I looked up on the internet and people said, "Oh, this is just Captain Marvel, who's apparently not a Marvel character."
Correct. Also.
So why is there two Shazams, and who am I actually going to see in this movie?
Okay. You are going to see Shazam, you're going to see both Shazams probably, because this is a very long and complicated history. Basically, the history of Captain Marvel goes back to 1930. I'm going to try and give you the Spark Notes version, because I could fill up half an hour with this. But, so essentially, when the character Captain Marvel, as it was called, was introduced back in the 1930s, it wasn't actually a DC Comics character. It was created by a publishing house called Fawcett Publishings that basically was getting into the comic book game. They created this character named Captain Marvel, who was originally this little kid named Billy Batson, who, I kid you not, got lured. It was a homeless kid who got lured into an abandoned subway tunnel by a stranger and ended up. I know, it's weird, but he got led into the lair of a great wizard named Shazam, who tells him that he's pure of heart and then bestows on him the powers of Shazam, and which is interesting because not only is Shazam the name of the wizard, and the kind of thing that Shazam says for Billy Batson to say to turn into Shazam, who adult superhero, whole weird thing. But Shazam also is an acronym that stands for, and I think I'm going to get this, the Wisdom of Solomon, the Strength of Hercules, the stamina of Atlas, the Power of Zeus, the Courage of Achilles, and the Speed of Mercury. So basically, he gets all those powers by Billy Batson saying the word Shazam, turns into what was known as Captain Marvel at the time. Now, eventually, DC Comics decided that Captain Marvel as a character was too similar to Superman, so they actually sued Fawcett Publishings, ended up winning in court, so Fawcett could no longer make any more Captain Marvel comics. But then, years later, there was the thought to bring back Captain Marvel. Fawcett couldn't actually do it because they had legal complications with DC. They ended up licensing the rights to DC Comics, but DC Comics couldn't use the name Captain Marvel either because that had already been bought by Marvel Comics. So instead, they started naming their comics just Shazam, still calling the character Captain Marvel, but because the comic was named Shazam, the character started being called Shazam, and then I think it became official in 2011 with the launch of the new 52 comics that Captain Marvel is now officially Shazam. So, to answer your question, Shazam is the name of the superhero, he's the name of the wizard, and it's the word that Billy Batson uses to turn into a superhero.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, lots of Shazam.
You think they're both going to be called Shazam in the movie?
I think that's probably it. I think that's a safe bet, if not only because Marvel Studios has been talking about making a Captain Marvel movie who would be a Miss Marvel movie who is actually Carol Danvers, which is a whole other thing. They're going to try and avoid as much complication as possible. If you just call it Shazam, that's all.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, number 2. Let's do this.
All right. So, a couple times recently, The Rock has talked about how much he loves anti-heroes, okay? And then, in fact, in his announcement today, he said something about anti-heroes, right?
Okay. Yeah, he said he loves playing any heroes, that's true.
But I've heard people all along say, oh, there's Shazam, and then there's the villain that's Black Adam.
Okay.
So, am I supposed to like The Rock in this movie?
Well, first off, how are you not going to like The Rock? I mean, the dude's charismatic and amazing. But to kind of keep this answer short, just because the last one was so long, Black Adam is generally a villain. He's written as a villain for Shazam. Part of it is that he has like mirrored powers to Shazam, where he's originally from ancient Egypt and was actually given the powers by the wizard Shazam because he was also viewed as being pure of heart. In the original origin story, this origin story has changed multiple times. But there are also, so he was originally a hero. He was originally seen as being someone who could do good deeds. But eventually he got corrupted by that power, which is kind of what ended up turning him evil. In some instances, he actually gets corrupted by someone else. There are kind of a lot of ins and outs to it, but there are, while most people know him as a villain, there are those signs. He's also had moments in continuity where he's kind of apologized for his crime, tried to kind of make up for it. So there is kind of there is definitely a history of anti-heroes in the Black Adam character. As for whether or not we're actually going to see an anti-hero version in the movie, I would say that, for starters, the guy who runs New Line Cinemas has called Black Adam the villain, so that's maybe something along those lines. But I think what it may also be is the fact that actors aren't supposed to see their characters as villains, so Dwayne Johnson, he has some sympathy for Black Adam, which, sure.
I'll probably we'll see.
Let's do it.
Okay. Alright, so this is a question about the larger world of Black Adam / Shazam. Okay? So, is this... I don't know if this is going to make sense. But is this Iron Man dark? Or is this like Batman Dead Parents dark?
Well, I will say that Billy Batson is yet another comic book character who doesn't have any parents, so he can add to the legacy in that sense. But what is actually interesting about DC Comics, and it came from announcements this week as well, is that it seems to be breaking away from what we've seen from DC Comics and Warner Brothers, which is kind of the Man of Steel, Christopher Nolan, dark and gritty kind of thing. We've been told that this is actually going to have a very different tone. It's actually going to be lighter and kind of more of a fun adventure, which I personally love, simply because this is a movie about a 10 to 14-year-old that turns into an adult superhero, and if the history of body switching comedies has told us anything, there's a lot of comedic potential in a child in an adult's body. So, I'm very excited for that prospect. Dwayne Johnson, of course, is, as mentioned, an extremely charismatic actor who can turn on the funny when he wants to, but can also turn on the serious. I think it's going to be a blend. I think it probably is going to, from what we've heard, it sounds like it'll be more like Iron Man than it will be like the Dark Knight trilogy.
If this is 80% as good as Big, people are going to love it.
There you go.
Okay. Alright, so do you think that Black Adam is going to have, in The Rock more specifically, is going to have a presence outside of this movie, or do you think he's going to be a one-off villain for the DC universe?
So that's complicated because, the thing is, Black Adam is predominantly seen as being a Shazam character. He's that's his prime adversary. But at the same time, you make a point. It's Dwayne Johnson. This is a guy who you want in your movies. Obviously he's actually been flirting with the role of Black Adam, going back to I think something like 2007, 2004, something in that area. Dwayne Johnson has a lot of interest in this character, and he's such a huge star at this point that I honestly found it weird that he was taking Black Adam simply because his career has gotten to a point where back in 2007 or whatever, he'd be the guy you get to play villain characters, but now the guy's a lead actor. He's the kind of guy you get to play a superhero.
He's awesome.
So it's very interesting that he is still playing Black Adam, presumably because it's the character that he really loves. To that end, Black Adam has been part of like bad guy alliances before. And you have examples like Loki on the big screen, who was a villain in one story, also predominantly known. I mean, albeit he has history with the Avengers, but also he crossed over. He kind of became bigger than himself. I could totally see DC kind of taking advantage of the fact that they have Dwayne Johnson, which you take advantage of,
right?
If you have him, and I could see them pushing him out even beyond what we see from Shazam. Fingers crossed.
Yes. Okay, so as you kind of brought up earlier, it's a little bit strange that The Rock took the Black Adam role, given where he's at in his career.
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is, how important is Black Adam to the Shazam universe? Like, when you see, say, a Batman movie, right? And if he's with Joker, right?
Okay.
But you're going to get 3 or 4 Batman scenes for every one Joker scene. Because The Rock is so huge, do you think this is going to be like a 50-50 enterprise, or...?
I'm not sure it will necessarily go 50-50, but I do agree. It does make logical sense that Black Adam's role would be expanded simply because you have Dwayne Johnson playing the role. I'd say that, there's probably going to be some disagreement on this, but those who been following Shazam since the beginning, most of those people are probably dead. But they kind of identify a character named Dr. Savannah, who's kind of a mad scientist type character, as Shazam's main arch villain. But I think it's safe to argue that Black Adam is Shazam's best known adversary. There's the fact that he's also a character who is transformed into. He also got the powers from Shazam. He also turns into this kind of God-gifted hero, in similar to many other superheroes having mirrored abilities. Captain America, Red Skull in the movie, Loki, Thor. Those kind of examples happen. But and again, you mentioned that Dwayne Johnson is the star that he is. I could see him playing a very, very big role. I think that this is still a Shazam movie, and Shazam is still going to probably take over the scene, but that makes me only wonder more who they're going to get to play him, because who are you going to get to upstage Dwayne Johnson as a hero versus a villain? Who wants to sign up for that deal? Seriously. But, yeah. So, I hope that answers your question.
It does. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. Actually, if you're done with your questions, that actually does open me up for a chance to ask some of my own.
Oh! Spin!
Switch. Which is, and this actually comes from the fact that I know that you're a big Dwayne Johnson fan.
I am.
And so I'm curious, just off the bat, having seen Dwayne Johnson in as many franchises as he's been in, I'm curious, how do you feel about him doing a comic book movie, which, again, you don't necessarily have much history and verse in?
I feel great,
yeah.
And I actually feel particularly great about him playing the villain.
Okay.
And here's why. Okay, so most people know, whether they're a wrestling fan or not, that Dwayne Johnson started in that world of wrestling,
yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, for people who don't watch wrestling or didn't watch wrestling back in the day, he is not one of the most famous wrestlers of all time because he's good at wrestling. Okay. He's not horrible, but the reason why he became The Rock is sort of the same reason why Hulk Hogan became Hulk Hogan.
Sure.
And that's because he has that really weird, unique charisma that allows him to just own a room. Anyone who's been at Comic-Con before, we saw that in Hall H this year,
totally.
where he comes out and it's just there's something magnetic.
Oh, dude, I've interviewed the guy. I know I've experienced the power of The Rock in person.
Yeah. and if there's one thing that at least I feel works in a supervillain, it's just having that thing where you just want to know what he's doing. Yeah. Whether you're rooting for him or against him, when you're watching The Dark Knight, you think even when the Joker's not on the screen, hey, I wonder what the Joker's up to right now, you know? And I feel like he's going to have that ability. So for me, it's just all going to come down to writing, and hopefully they use him in the right percentage of doses.
Sure.
Where he doesn't get tired, he doesn't have to carry the movie, he's just like a secret weapon that they pull out.
Well, that does lead me to my next question. I get to throw my own card. Which is, now that you know what you know about Black Adam, how does that change your perception about, A, whether Dwayne Johnson was the right choice for the character, or B, how you think that he could potentially bring his own personal energy to it?
I would say it makes me feel better.
Okay.
And the reason why is this. I really like the idea. You mentioned kind of offhandedly that he has mirrored powers with the superhero, and I like the idea of, because he's so physically intimidating and he's so big that he's going to seem, even if he has the exact same powers as Shazam, he's going to seem overwhelming.
That's true.
Because he's a kid that's grown up, and I think it's going to be a great test.
I totally agree. We're running out of time. Mac, thank you so much for being on the show again.
Anytime.
It was great seeing you. Everyone, see you.